The Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. Chapter 6. Takeout? Not one time since Morgan had arrived at the house had Katie and James gotten takeout. Morgan and Eli left behind the mystery of the windy drawing pad. It had probably been a draft anyway. Eli must have been mistaken and scrambled to get out of the attic so as to not get caught there. James had never explained what the consequences would be, but Morgan didn't want to find out. By the time they got down to the first floor, James was home too. He and Katie were standing together in the kitchen waiting. James was usually easy to read, but the expression he wore now was hard to describe and equally hard to interpret. He had a genuine smile, but at the same time it looked like he was constipated. Morgan's best guess was excitement and nervousness rolled up in one. But why? "I'm kind of freaked out now," Morgan admitted. Eli said nothing. "We're allowed to do something special for supper, aren't we?" Katie asked. Morgan sniffed the air. Takeout usually had a distinctive smell, depending on where it was from. Everybody knew that when they're passing McDonald's, for example, McDonald's had a smell. But this one, she couldn't place it. Morgan caught Eli sniffing too. She looked at him for an answer, but he just shrugged. "Special why?" Morgan asked. "You'll see," Katie said. "Is this because of breakfast?" she asked. "No," James said, and he appeared to be stifling laughter at the memory. "But we do," and he looked at Katie, "have something to talk about." "Later," Katie said. "Yeah," James said. It was dumb of me to make faces out of the food, but I don't think it was appropriate for you to act the way you did. We wouldn't reward you for that." "Fine," Morgan said, and she decided she may as well collect more good karma. "Well, I shouldn't have made a mad face about your food, so I'm sorry." "Thank you, Morgan," Katie said. "All right," James said, nodding. "Apology accepted, and I'm sorry for treating you like a kid. There will be no more faces made out of food." "We're learning." Katie looked at Morgan, meeting her eyes, and then Eli. "We never had foster children before. We've never had children before. If you just let us try." Katie's eyes started to glisten, but she gathered herself. "Why don't we just go eat?" What was up with that? No house that Morgan had been to previously had someone like Katie or James. No foster parents had ever looked close to tears, in a good way, because of her presence. Mostly they seemed to want to help, even if their attempts had been misguided. As Morgan had told Eli, Katie and James were trying to be saviors for the poor native kids. There were some, though, who were just trying to collect some extra money by taking in a foster child. There was one house Morgan had been in when she was 9 and 10, where she was treated fine, she guessed. But every time the family, they had their own kids too, went out together, like for a movie or something, they left Morgan at home in front of the television. They didn't even want to spend $10 on her for a movie ticket. They never intended for her to be actually like family. She always thought that Katie and James were in the savior category. They didn't need the money, but maybe she was wrong about them. Then again, maybe she wasn't. How much could really a piece together from glistening eyes, food, faces, and takeout? "Sure," Morgan said. "Let's eat and celebrate whatever mystery occasion we're celebrating." "We just want it to be a surprise until it isn't," Katie said. Morgan looked at Eli with wide eyes as they entered the dining room. She mouthed, "What the heck?" Eli shrugged. He did a lot of shrugging. It wasn't your average takeout. That was much as clear as Katie and James started to plate the food from the containers. They were using what Morgan figured were good plates. She had eaten it only rarely, as a matter of fact, but this sure did taste good. The last time she had some was in September, during the school's Orange Shirt Day, when the student body honored the First Nations children who had attended residential schools. Over lunch, everybody had been given the bannock. It seemed to Morgan on both occasions that butter was the key. Once Morgan took a bite, it was like everybody else was okay to start eating. For several minutes, they all dug into their dinner and didn't talk. The only sounds were knives and forks scraping against the plates and chewing. The chewing reminded Morgan of the crunching sound that she heard that morning, which reminded her of walking through the snow, which reminded her of the cold wind, which reminded her of the little gusts of air that had mysteriously brushed up against her face in the attic. "Is the food okay?" Katie asked hopefully. Morgan nodded while she finished a mouthful of chili. "Yeah." "You don't have to like it, really," Katie said. "I want us to be honest with each other." Oh, I do. Morgan stopped herself from adding that it wasn't like Katie had cooked it, and why did dinner have to be about trust anyway? It's good, Eli said, backing Morgan up. From the look on her foster parents' faces, Eli's approval meant more to them. For that, she couldn't blame them. She heard them talking in their bedroom at night. James didn't know how to whisper, how to connect with him, how to make him feel at home. Why did they always seem to want her and Eli to feel at home? This wasn't their home. They were just staying there. And one day, it wouldn't be. I got it from this Indigenous-owned restaurant downtown, Katie said. I wanted... Please don't say anything about feeling at home, Morgan thought. She felt a spark of flame in her chest. It's about to get warm and then hot. She closed her eyes tight, bracing herself. But Katie must have picked up on the signal. It wasn't subtle. Well, anyway, we're glad you liked it, James said. The table remained silent for the duration of the meal, as though more than savoring the food. Katie and James were savoring the small victories of having Eli speak and both kids liking the meal. Once they'd all finished, Katie and James cleared up all the dishes from the table. Morgan even offered to help, but James quickly told her it wasn't necessary, which made her suspicious. They disappeared into the kitchen for a long time without re-emerging. Even more suspicious. Morgan waited for the nervous anticipation. She and Eli glanced at each other intermittently. He looked nervous. He was probably waiting to see if she could hold it together. She wondered what could be next. After an Indigenous meal? A gift? What kind of gift? A braid of sweetgrass? A dream catcher? One of those tobacco ties she'd seen on the orange shirt day? But she was pretty sure only elders got tobacco offerings. Eli would know. Hey, she whispered, as if talking about anything Indigenous was a secret. Yeah? He whispered back. Tobacco, she stated as though the words was an entire question. Yeah? Is that just for elders? Like you have to give it to them when you want them to ask them a question, right? She asked. It's like, he sat forward in his chair. When you're asking somebody to share knowledge, you offer them tobacco. It doesn't have to be an elder. But they, like Katie and James, wouldn't give me a tobacco or anything, right? She asked. Not unless they want you to share knowledge, he said. Well, Morgan crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair. I don't know anything about stuff like that, so they're in for a surprise. You don't even know that they're going to do that, Eli shouted whisperedly back. He looked even more worried now. Are you going to freak if they bring something native? He asked, making air quotes while saying native. I didn't freak out about the bannock, did I? Morgan said. I just shut up and ate it. Yeah, but... Katie and James entered the dining room, and James was carrying a cake that looked like a birthday cake. He placed it in front of Morgan, and she avoided reading what was written on top, mostly so she wouldn't get annoyed. But there was more. Before we have dessert, Katie announced, we have a little gift for you. They actually did get me tobacco or something, Morgan thought. She saw Katie's hands shaking and prepared herself to make it through the tobacco offering without looking like she had any negative emotions about it. Wait! Morgan decided to save them from getting food-faced level mad. Please tell me what this is all about. Like, why doesn't Eli get something? You don't want him to be sad, but you're totally leaving him out. I'm okay, Eli said, sounding like he wanted no part of any of this. Well, Katie exchanged a look with James, who nodded at her. We wanted to do something special because you've been here for 2 months now. 2 months today, James added, as though Morgan needed the math explained. But maybe she did. She hadn't kept track of when she arrived and certainly would never have kept track to celebrate the date. So we're celebrating? Morgan tried to swallow the burning in her chest. Our anniversary? Like we're dating? Morgan continued in her head. That's right, Katie said. Not in a weird way, James said. Oh, but it was weird. But Morgan also kept this to herself. Why 2 months? Why not 1 month? It just felt like maybe you needed something nice done for you today, Katie said. So this is because of the food face, Morgan said. You know, I would have been like, fine, if you didn't make my food into a happy face, right? That was just coincidence, James said, obviously trying to avoid another blow-up. Are you fine, though? Katie asked. This question hung in the air until Katie placed a box on the table beside the cake. It had black wrapping paper with 2 red ribbons, one in red and then another in yellow, which met at the top of the package under a pretty white bow. They were the same colors as the medicine wheel Morgan had seen at school. Morgan took a breath. Remain calm. So what? They're celebrating your 2-month anniversary with them. It's cringeworthy, but there are worse things in the world. Climate change, for example. That's worse. Katie and James looked hopeful. Eli looked scared. Katie slid the gift closer to Morgan. Open it. Okay, Morgan said. Sure. Morgan pulled off the lid, slid off the ribbons, and ripped open the wrapping paper to reveal a shoebox. The box read, Manitoba Mucklucks. She lifted the lid and saw a brand new pair of moccasins. They were mostly black with black leather and black fur around the opening and a dark shade of gray over the top with some intricate white beadwork. Morgan closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. Do you like them? Katie asked. Morgan kept her eyes closed as long as she could. Morgan? James said. Morgan shook her head quickly. She needed a minute. Just accept them and put them on your stupid feet. Let it go. Katie said, We thought you could wear them around the house. I know the hardwood down here gets cold in the morning, so you would be more comfortable. And in the winter, you can actually wear them outside instead of boots, James said. They're called wool tippy. Wool tippy, Morgan repeated, still breathing. We wanted to make sure you feel more at home, Katie said. Morgan slammed a flat palm against the table. Okay. She opened her eyes. Katie and James looked stunned, frozen, wide-eyed. Eli looked like a balloon that had air seeping out of it. Let me get this straight, she said, trying to lower her voice. You thought that giving me something cultural as a totally lame 2-month anniversary celebration from a place I was taken from would make me feel more at home here? Well, we don't want you to feel disconnected from your culture, that's all, James said. I don't even know my culture. Morgan put both hands against her chest, and she could feel her heart pounding. I've literally been away from my home since I was a toddler. Being a kid with no real home, with no real parents, accepting the fact that there probably won't be a 3 or 4-month anniversary with a cake and moccasins, that's my culture. No, it's not, Eli said. Who you are is still inside of you. Be quiet, Eli. You're not helping, Morgan said. He's right, though, James said. We thought some of this might help you reconnect with... We've read that. As foster parents, we should try to expose you to your culture. Katie looked about ready to burst into tears. We don't want to make the same mistakes that have been made in the past. Well, unless you can, go into the quantum realm, go back into time, and stop my mom from getting rid of me, Morgan stopped. She placed both palms flat on the table to keep herself steady. Everything's a mistake. Your mom didn't get rid of you, Katie said. Did she tell you that? Morgan asked through the clenched teeth. What are you guys, friends on Facebook? No, just no mother would. You're not a mother, so how would you know? Morgan stood up. She glanced from Katie to James to Eli. Maybe you should read one of my books instead of whatever you've been reading, because trying to fix things, trying to fix me, is really a fantasy. She turned away from the table, from the people and the cake and the moccasins, and started toward the stairs. Morgan, come back here and sit down, please, James said. No, Katie said to him. Just let her go. Give her space. Let her go. Those 3 words echoed in her mind. Let her go. Morgan was sure that's exactly what they do, especially after a day like today.